Hey, everybody. I'm Pastor Jamie. Welcome to Good Shepherd Lutheran Church for our weekly devotions this week. First of all, it's great to be with you all again as we read some scripture and talk about it a little. Today, I'll be reading from the daily lectionary for Wednesday, February 10th, which comes to us from the Gospel of Mark, the third chapter, verses 7 to 12. Jesus departed with his disciples to the sea, and a great multitude from Galilee followed him. Hearing all that he was doing, they came to him in great numbers from Judea, Jerusalem, Idumea, beyond the Jordan, and the region around Tyre and Sidon. He told his disciples to have the boat ready for him because of the crowds, so that they would not crush him, for he had cured many, so that all who had diseases pressed upon him to touch him. Whenever the unclean spirits saw him, they fell down before him and shouted, "You are the Son of God." But he sternly ordered them not to make him known. Here ends our reading. The interesting thing about this text, although it doesn't ever really show up in the lectionary, is that it's something of a transitional scene in Mark. Moving from Jesus's local healings and controversies to the national scenes. The important detail in this brief scene is the sheer scope of Jesus's growing influence and fame. That place is the place, as Mark says, people come from to hear Jesus mark out a massive territory in the first century Palestine. People are coming from all over to meet Jesus. And what happens when they come? Exactly what happened on the local scene. Jesus heals, proclaims, casts out demons, and orders the demons to keep their mouths shut. Here in chapter 9, verses 7 to 12, which I just read, it sort of acts as a summary. See, from chapter 1, verse 1 to chapter 3, verse 6, you kind of have sort of the first act of Mark. And then you have this kind of summary. And summaries are good because summaries look back on and sort and gather up the truth that has been presented. It's kind of like watching a video. And then you get to a point where the person who's leading the discussion stops the video and then sort of asks everybody and says, let me give you a still photo. Let's stop this video and let's take a moment to to discuss what we have seen so far. And not only does this kind of summary look back, but it also looks forward because it gathers up everything that we know, which then generates momentum for moving ahead. The demons knew who he was. God declared who he was. The evidence made it obvious as to who he was. So why did people not get it? Why do we go through the whole book and no one ever says, "Yes, you are the Son of God"? I mean, God says it, the demons say it, and finally at the end, a Roman soldier says it. But what about the Jewish people? Wasn't all of this convincing enough? There was a barrier, a massive barrier, and we get insight into this in chapter 2 when Jesus says, "No one sews a patch of unsunk cloth on an old garment. Otherwise, the patch pulls away from it. The new from the old, and the worst tear results. No one puts new wine into old wineskins. Otherwise, the wine will burst the skins. The wine is lost, and the skins as well. But only puts new wine into fresh wineskins." Jesus is saying that Judaism will always have a covenant with God. That has already been established. But Jesus now is bringing in a new covenant to expand that circle of the saved and redeemed. So again, sometimes you may ask yourself, what's going on here? Why is Mark telling his story of Jesus in this way? I think Mark wants his readers, then and now, to notice that the whole people of Palestine recognize him as someone very special. Jesus has become, in today's terms, a rock star, and even has to take precautions about avoiding being crushed by fans. Mark wants us to notice that Jesus' adversaries, The demons recognize who he is. And Mark wants to point out that Jesus is not a local, but a global mission to oppose the powers of evil. So when both commoner and adversary recognize for who and what Jesus is, the only question is whether those opposed as religious elders and leaders will as well. Or maybe the question Mark poses is whether we will. See, physical needs keep popping up like weeds in a yard. You can spray and pull them, and others can keep right up after the first ones to get taken out. You can't win. Some who ignore their yard have lots of weeds and a pretty poor yard. Some who are conscientious about mowing and fertilizing and spraying and pruning and so forth have pretty nice lawns. But the same goes for our soul. It requires constant maintenance, lest the weeds of our life take over. We have always faced the pressures and things that would otherwise distract us from our callings. Jesus had the Pharisees, the Herodians, and others who were negative toward him and were plotting to destroy him. The evil spirits, or the demons, also refused to obey his commands as they spoke loudly that he was the Son of God. This would get the crowd going and make them either rush him to touch him or want to anoint him as king. But both of those were contrary to what Jesus felt his purpose was. Both Jews and Gentiles were coming from all parts of the Middle East now. Jesus attracted all and healed all without regard to their ancestry or culture or affliction. We all have needs, and then we'll taken care of due course. Some problems will even attend us throughout our lives, just to keep us on our toes. Not to worry though, even those even for those whose problems would be strapped throughout our lives, there will always be various forms of solution to help us through them. Note, they may not be eliminated, but they can be helped. Well, that's what I got for us this week, everybody. I want to remind you that next Wednesday is Ash Wednesday. So I'll be using one of the texts for Ash Wednesday for next week for my reflection. Also, we will be having drive-through ashes in our parking lot from 12 to 1 next week. So I'll be recording this early. And then also we are having drive-through ashes from 5:30 to 6:30 before our online service begins at 7. So if you're locally here, feel free to join us for those imposition ashes. If you're not, feel free to join us still online for the service again at 7 o'clock. But again, I hope you enjoyed today. Please feel free to like or comment, and we'll check this periodically to get back with people. And again, until we are together again, take care of yourselves and each other.